right?
More or less right. Have we started?
Yeah, yeah.
Rather. Very good. A fanatical idea of mass mobilization, a cult of the leader, a cult of death. Fortunately, in some ways, because it's self-destructive. It's just also true of fascism. It's irrational, in other words, as well as extremely violent. And a cult of worship of violence, for instance. Of course, without even mentioning it, a fanatical hatred of the Jewish people, and an attempt at the impossible, at the recreation of a lost, glorious past. In this case, the Caliphate. Well, these parallels are good enough, I think, to say that it's not vulgar to draw them.
Now, let's not dance around. Not all monotheisms are exactly the same at the moment. They're all based on the same illusion. They're all plagiarisms of each other. But there's one in particular that at the moment is posing a serious menace, not just to freedom of speech and freedom of expression, but to quite a lot of other freedoms too. And this is the religion that exhibits the horrible trio of self-hatred, self-righteousness, and self-pity. I'm talking about militant Islam. Globally, it's a gigantic power. Globally, it's a gigantic power. It controls an enormous amount of oil wealth, several large countries and states, with an enormous fortune. It's pumping the ideology of Wahhabism and Salafism around the world, poisoning societies where it goes, ruining the minds of children, stultifying the young in its madrasas, training people in violence, making a cult of death and suicide and murder. That's what it does globally. It's quite strong. In our societies, it poses as a cringing minority whose faith you might offend, which deserves all the protection that a small and vulnerable group might need. Now, it makes quite large claims for itself, doesn't it? It says it's the final revelation. It says that God spoke to one illiterate businessman in the Arabian Peninsula 3 times through an archangel, and that the resulting material, which, as you can see when you read it, is largely plagiarized from the Old and the New Testament, almost all of it actually plagiarized ineptly from the Old and New Testament, is to be accepted as a divine revelation and as the final and unalterable one, and that those who do not accept this revelation are fit to be treated as cattle, infidels, potential chattel, slaves, and victims. Well, I tell you what, I don't think Muhammad ever heard those voices. I don't believe it. And the likelihood that I'm right, as opposed to the likelihood that a shepherd a businessman who couldn't read, had bits of the Old and New Testament redictated to him by an archangel, I think puts me much more near the position of being objectively correct. But who is the one under threat? The person who promulgates this and says, I'd better listen because if I don't, I'm in danger? Or me, who says, no, I think this is so silly you could even publish a cartoon about it? And up go the placards, and up go the yells and the howls and the screams. Behead those. This is in London. This is in Toronto. This is in New York. It's right in our midst now. Behead those who cartoon Islam. Do they get arrested for hate speech? No. Might I get in trouble for saying what I've just said about the Prophet Muhammad? Yes, I might. Where are your priorities, ladies and gentlemen? You're giving away what's most precious in your own society, and you're giving it away without a fight, and you're even praising the people who want to deny you the right to resist it. Shame on you while you do this. Make the best use of the time you've got left. This is really serious.
I've had enough of it, especially about how it's so much like the Blitz. I mean, just look here for a second. Throughout the whole of the 1930s, the British stolidly and phlegmatically and stoically lined up to vote for conservatives who were trying to give away Europe to Hitler. They wanted him to do it. When Chamberlain came back from Munich and was greeted by the Queen Mother, the Queen Mum on Buckingham Palace balcony, they all flooded into the streets to applaud. They couldn't get enough of it. They wanted a quiet life. They love business as usual. Yeah, let's do that. And then when it all goes wrong, they get what they've earned for this, then what else can they do but stand still under the bombing where they can't move? It's an island, for Christ's sake. When they could run away, they did. They sent their children to the country. The rich people moved into the well-fortified hotels. You read George Orwell on what it's like under the Blitz, or Stephen Spender, his time as a fire brigade officer. Fire brigade would wait for the flames to die out and then they'd loot everything from the houses. They'd say, well, actually, we don't take children's toys, Squire, but anything else pretty much fair game. There's always something. It was a disgraceful performance. They blamed the Jews for hoarding goods and for pushing in front of queues. They panicked and trampled each other to get into the underground, which now people would trample themselves getting out of, to get away from it. It was all pretty ghastly. So enough of this romanticization of the English, had enough of it. But at least there was one thing you could say. Nobody said, well, why don't we give them what they want, the boss? Why don't we just surrender? Why don't we look for the root causes of their grievance? There was at least none of that bullshit. And there won't be any of that bullshit anywhere where I can raise my voice either. Say it once, so not to have to say it again. You do not deal yourself a hand in the conduct or formation of British foreign or defence policy by putting a bomb on a bus in Tavistock Square. You do not. Final. Do I have to say it twice? No. Will I listen to anyone who says that we should? I certainly will not. I certainly will not. And nor should anyone else. And the Prime Minister will not do so. And what people ought to realise is that there is indeed a connection between this and the Iraq War. The same people did this at King's Cross and Edgware Road and Aldgate last week, who last Friday blew up 24 school children in Baghdad. Yes, of course there's a connection. We're fighting the same people. And they will rue the day. We will outlive and outkill and outfight them. They say they prefer death to life. Maybe they do. If they want to be martyrs, we're here to help. But our love, really here to help, but our love for London will outlive their hatred and their love for death, believe me.
Hear,
no
hear.
question about that.
Hear, hear.